So I think this is quite an interesting journey how it started. Someone actually asked me a year ago pula. Somebody asked me a few weeks ago these questions, a couple of them actually when I met them, and they said, your thing that you just started, how long have you been running it? And a lot of even my back in my office, one of the Property Hub CEO actually asked me, what's this MET thing I see on Monday you post on Facebook? And I was very curious to find out. And so it got me explaining to them, sharing the vision of this, and it came down to I shared with him, is based on 3 values. If I have to sum up the whole MET-Axe-Sharpening program, I'll sum it up in 3 values, which is the whole MET session is based on pause, reflect, and carry on. And so when I explained it to him, he was like, wow, that's pretty interesting how you just sum up the woodcutter story and you just put it in 3 values. And I said, yeah, that's the whole driving point of this. And they were just curious to find out more before he okay, I need to go for a meeting. I'll catch up with you next time. I want to find out more about the MET thing that you're doing. And so that got him, that got me thinking, I think it's about time we pull off something this time today for the New Year's thing. And just to answer a couple of questions that he did ask, I did say when we started this, it all came from a birth of a conversation through a topic called we were doing at that time. I think it was Crazy Faith. I think that was back in, if I'm not wrong, not September. Yeah, I think it was September. But August was when it came out, that series. It came out. That's when I think we started sharing with one another, right? I think somewhere in August or end of August. I roughly remember. I can't remember. If you all remember when exactly did we? Do you remember how did I manage to share this with you guys? Because I'm trying to recall back how did I share that Crazy Faith series with you guys, because that's very interesting, because that's where the start of everything began.
I think I actually recall on that because you actually shared with us on how it all started back then. It was more of you went out with Tommy, and then after that you went somewhere and you were at the car park. So both you and Tommy sat in the car park watching a video on Crazy Faith. And that was when both of you said it was quite mind-blowing. And that was when you started to share the videos with us also, to share what it was all about on the sermons and how it actually can give us a different view of a different side of things. So slowly it began to slowly grow. Week by week, we started to watch the videos. You started to share the videos with us week by week. Then we suddenly a group chat started. So all of us were discussing on it.
I didn't remember that actually. I think I did show. Was it with Ben? Is it Ben? You mentioned Ben?
Oh, Tommy.
Oh yeah, it was Tommy. Yeah. Okay, I think now I'm. Yeah. Now that you pulled that trigger, that trigger. Now I remembered something from that. I think we were going to watch movie at Bandar Utama or something, and I think that was after Jar Coffee. I remember going to Jar Coffee with them for lunch. I can't remember what it is, but if Tommy, you guys are watching this recording later, which is going to be up, you can comment on what movie did we watch. I can't remember what movie did we watch, but I think it was last year. I can't remember, but it's somewhere in August. It's one of the movies somewhere in August. But yeah, if you do just write it down in a comment on New Year's Day when you see this. Just put it in the comments. But yeah, I think it came from the movie. I think it was on Wavy Faith, because I said gotta look at I need to show you something, because this guy is like, he's like the Kevin Hart of preacher. And I said, you know what guys, I need to show you this, because the way he acted out, I think you guys remember that part, right? And they were on the boat, and Mike was just demonstrating how the 12 disciples, they were on the boat and they saw a ghost they said there was a ghost. There was a ghost not a ghost. They thought they saw a ghost, but it's actually Jesus walking.
Man, we got to get up out of here. We rowing. And then the Bible said, keep rowing. And then the Bible says that they see something in the distance. And it looks like a ghost. And somebody said, it's a ghost. And everybody gets scared.
But I think after that, what was funny was it caught their attention. And I just said, hey, the sermons after the 4th or 5th week of Crazy Faith. I think, I can't remember, was it after that? I think I said, let's talk about Crazy Faith, let's build about this. I don't remember how did I approach you guys. Do you remember how that came about? Because that would be the start of something. I know it's a good place. We started from Tommy. I showed them. Yeah, that's one. And then, you don't remember how did that came about? I don't remember approaching you guys unless I started texting, or was it through WhatsApp? I know it was WhatsApp. Your mention was WhatsApp. But I don't recall how.
Yeah, I'll share mine because how I started to watch Crazy Faith was also because that time I had to make a major life decision. So I was in the wavy state. So, and then I also was dealing with some struggles, and then to the point where I kind of lost hope, and you reached out at a very difficult time that I was going through, and somehow your words of encouragement and then that's how I was introduced to the Crazy Faith series. Like you shared a lot of good points from there, and I started watching it myself, and it really helped me a lot. Like the biggest lesson I had was to realize that my faith is in the who and not the what that is happening in my life. So that really literally took me on a turning point. It was a turning point for my life. And so and then you started to create this group to talk about, mostly to share about this Crazy Faith, because every week there's a new topic from the series, and we are kind of like catching along with the Pastor Mike taught. So and then that's how the momentum started, and we just watched ourselves, and then we discussed in the chat group. That's what I remember.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to recall, because that really led to a birth of something. You're right, there was a momentum there, and that led to, of course, I remember then after you guys started watching I'm just trying to figure the puzzle of the beginning. How did I reach out to you guys? And it's funny because that time, remember I mentioned, I think 2 weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago, hang on, I'll be right back for a moment. Got something to answer. I was just trying to figure the puzzle back, at the beginning. How did we meet? How did we make the connection? Because remember, I think during Ivy's session, I said, I asked one question, Ivy, how did we actually meet? And we couldn't even figure the puzzle how we met, because we just we connected with one another. Like, it seems like we've known each other for a long time, and when it came to the question, when I asked her, we both were just puzzled. How do we know one another? I don't think it was quite a curious connection. I know definitely it's through Abel, but I think it was more than that. How do we started the conversation going and stuff? Of course, the connection then built up, the momentum built up because of the badminton sessions, but I don't recall how we connected then. So that's why I think I'm asking this question. How did we connect with one another through that at the beginning? I think later we'll figure out that part later on, because it's quite amazing how we just connected as friends, right? And I remember down the line after the WhatsApp, I think the idea of trying to do it in a cafe, started building up the session. We started saying, let's do a cafe talk, let's do it a weekly thing, have host people, do it live, and try and reach out to people. Do you still remember anything about that?
Let me remember. That one is definitely can remember. Mainly for me, it was more of when it all started, like what Joyce was saying, it was you reached out. For her, maybe she had a season of waviness, right? For me, I was trying to get back into knowing more about what faith is to me, but I just didn't know how. So that was when suddenly you told me, Tommy, Monty, and a few of us is going to start a group chat. Would you like to join in the group chat? We'll be talking more on faith. Then I'm like, oh, this is actually quite interesting. So I took it as an opportunity, to hop in and just embark on a journey to actually find out more, to learn from others what faith is. Then slowly, as momentum built, then you were just saying, okay, let's just have a cafe talk. You were saying, I had an idea of having a cafe talk. Rather than just among this group, what if we reached out to other people? Because there will definitely be a lot more people that might be curious about it, that might not have the platform to express their concerns or be open about anything. So you just say, let's have a cafe talk. Then from there, it was being planned. You had the launching date, everything all set in stone. We even planned on pre-launch. We had a pre-launch before Chinese New Year with a few of us on Saturday. Then from then on, it was hiccups here and there. There were a couple of hiccups here and there, but I think slowly, because of the COVID session, the whole COVID thing, and also I think it was a timely thing. Not many people were able to attend that day, unfortunately, for the cafe talk itself on the actual day. A lot of people pulled out on the last minute. So that was when just Tommy, yourself, and myself, we just decided, okay, since we don't have a cafe talk, why not we just go for lunch? Then we went for lunch, and then we just chatted over lunch, like, what is it like? We had so many ideas on what we were going to do. We wanted to do skits, we wanted to do role play and all that. So that was how it started to journey on. Yeah.
So my question to you guys along the way, what was your view? What were your thinking when the whole idea was being developed, when I was sharing with you this vision, and then when it came to that moment of pause or hurdles? Because these are lessons that, how far we've come to today. It's because of learning through those experiences, which at that time, of course, I was slightly disappointed with the turnout, but I always knew something because of that faith. If it was not for the crazy faith series I watched, I wouldn't have persevered, saying that even though I've been disappointed, but I said, no, I still believe there's more ideas. I kept on hoping. But if it's not because of that foundation, I don't think we would have been where we are today. And so that's why I was asking you guys, what were you going through when we were coming through these obstacles? Perhaps, Joyce, you were not around, of course, at the time. But maybe from Wendy, share your side of things when things didn't turn out. What were you thinking? Because I think this is real thing. If I was somebody who's there, if I didn't build my faith on that faith foundation, I would have just given up. Like I just said, this is not going to work out. If I had to be frank, because is he crazy? Is he nuts? I don't think he's going to work. That kind of thinking, I would have thought like that. Somebody who's trying to do something that might simply not work. So what's your thoughts on that?
To be very honest, when you wanted to start on this journey, right, it was, to me, very bold. For me, I wouldn't have actually had the guts to start something like that, But when you wanted to start it, I was thinking, it's a good idea to start it. But when the hurdles came, I could see that you were disappointed. I could sense that you were disappointed as well. But then maybe I'm a bit more, I don't take things too personal at some point. So for me, I was just going through like, if this doesn't work, doesn't mean it cannot work forever. There will definitely be other ways. Why not you turn? At that point, there was a lot of YouTubers and all those kind of things. They started coming out with a lot of podcasts. And so happened that day when I was talking to you, I was actually listening to one of the podcasts from one of the YouTubers. Then I was like thinking, if you can't do it live in person, when you had the idea of going live in the cafe to reach out to people across the globe. At that point, Joyce was already in Japan. So for us, we still want her to be part of it. We didn't want her to be left out. So we thought of going Facebook Live and all those kind of things in person with us communicating with them. So I thought, if you could have already done that, why not we just go to podcasts? We just do recordings and all those kind of things. You could always do it online, and just from there, I think that was how you started to pick things up. Probably it gave you an idea, like maybe we could do something virtually online within a small group. Start small, maybe don't go too wide, too far first, maybe just start small. But I knew you had a lot of hurdles. You wanted to rent equipment here and there in between for the cafe, but there were so many hurdles that stopped you from having the cafe talk itself. Yeah. So when the day came and all that, yeah.
You did mention, that's a good point. You did mention about doing podcasts, but I think what happened was it was pretty interesting because when COVID struck, I think that was the birth of where Zoom came about. And then when Zoom came about, that was when I think we came on board and just said, hey guys, let's, taking from the point you did mention about podcasts, who knew? Who knew down the road 6 months later I started thinking about that, and that's part of the idea you gave for the podcast for Spotify. So I have to give credits to you as well when you did mention about podcasts, but we didn't know when was the podcast going to be out. But what I think gave spun out this whole journey was the birth of Zoom during this pandemic. Just this afternoon, I was with a friend, Arik. I was just saying, 2020, for all of us, it's going to be a year that a lot of us would want to forget. But I would take heart from 2020 that there's a lot of things I've taken out of this. A lot of creative ideas that happened. So let's talk about how Zoom came about and played that role, and it's played a very vital role, Zoom, until today. What happened was, I guess when Zoom came about, that was when we started continuing doing, we started doing Crazy Faith? Were we watching the Crazy Faith on YouTube? I think we did a couple of episodes, 2 or 3 episodes, I think we watched or something like that. I can't remember. Did we watch an episode together?
We just shared the points. Like you prepared, like you prepare all the slides.
You gave us all the notes. You went the extra mile and shared with us your takeaways from each sermon. Yeah. And then we watched it on our own, and then we shared
We discussed over
your
Zoom.
call. Yeah.
How did I forget that? I thought we were watching something. Yeah. Anyways, I think then after that,
we started watching Alpha.
We started doing this.
There were short clips.
There were
short clips in between.
Oh, correct.
Then we proceeded with the others. But we watched, I think, 2 series, I think. It went into relationship goals also, not only Crazy Faith.
Oh, interesting. I don't remember watching. I don't remember relationship goal.
A little bit at the beginning. Then that was when Alpha came in.
I think that's where we started watching a little bit of Alpha, which we did watch Alpha. I think we did the full thing, wanted to experience the thing, and I think was after that Alpha that reminded me of something that my leader had done when I was working in my workplace. And I think we were doing the Alpha, I think somewhere from April to about June, I think. April, no, we did it every week, the video, at least once a week, I think we did that. And I think it came to a point in June when we finished, we started doing something which was, 1 second, I'm gonna pause this for a bit. So yeah, I think we've got it from after the Alpha thing. Then I started thinking, my boss, I started thinking, hey, I remember about the Alpha thing that I did back then when he showed me about this, and I said, now that my trip, alright, just for the viewers who are watching this, I was supposed to be in London at that time because I was supposed to pursue a course, but because of the lockdown, everything had thrown the plans all up in the air, and as I said, 2020 had flipped our plans all upside down, and so even my plan was flipped, but as Mike Todd said, we just say F it. So I flipped what my situation was flipped, but I flipped it upside down, and it's quite funny how things flipped, right? It's supposed to flip my side, it's supposed to flip my life upside down as well. This situation is supposed to lead into discouragement, but what instead it did was it got me thinking, of course, to come up with this. And then it was, I think, so after I thought about the MET session, thought about the now I'm just recalling the whole thing. So I approached my boss, came up with an idea. So I said, hey, there was this topic I wanted to do. Perhaps it will benefit everybody because it applies the very foundation of what we were doing in the Faith series, and this was the value based on grace, right? And I said, hey, this would be very, very good. It does not just apply to just our Christian contact people, but it also applies to everybody involved. So it doesn't just involve us, it's spread to a wider audience. And then that was when the decision on that day itself, so I postponed my trip to London. It's supposed to happen in October, and then it got postponed again to next year, April, which is, in just a couple of months time. So I deferred, and I think during that time I said, let's push on with this axe sharpening session that my boss did back then. Let's make full use of 2020, because now that I'm going to be stuck here for another 5-6 months, I can't travel. Let's see where this axe sharpening session would go. And so that was the first thing I did. I approached my boss. Not boss lah. I think he would just say, don't call me boss, I'll say mentor and leader. And I dropped him a text and said, the axe sharpening sessions we did physically back 2 years ago in the physical settings, may I have your permission to run it and take the materials and run it with a group of people? And I think that was when things started, that's when I got his permission. And I think I approached you guys and I said, guys, I've got something that we can run for the next, I don't know, I didn't tell you how long it was, but I sort of had that plan all planned out for the rest of the year. I think I sort of said, I've got something that will cover us for the rest of the year, to keep us occupied, to keep our friends who tuned in occupied. And what happened next was, it's pretty incredible. I think you all watched the journey after that. I think we all started off with, of course, the giving and receiving feedback. I think we ran the session over about 3 weeks. It started in July, because I still have the schedule which shows which date we started. So it's definitely in July. And I think it was August, or was it end of July? I told you all I have another idea to make this even better. I can't remember when was it, but I think I remember at that time I said to myself, how are we going to make it better? How are we going to make the axe sharpening better? How are we going to pull in people? How are we going to make it attractive while also maintaining that value, the grace values, right? So for those watching this recording, this thing that we're doing, the grace value, again, just a recap, is basically we base the axe sharpening on this on this value called grace. So G means gracious. For example, if I'm saying giving for a topic of giving and receiving feedback, that applies the graciousness of somebody giving a feedback. It applies. There's also R, which means resolute, right? And then you have A, which means appreciate. C means capable, and E means engage. So for this topic, giving and receiving feedback, we apply the values of graciousness, we apply of engaging, and we also apply of appreciate. Yes. So that's how the values, how we align our topics based on grace, and each of it has its significant meaning to it. And I think that was how most of our sessions are run. And I think what happened was after that, we ran for about 5 weeks. Then I said something about getting speakers, I think. Something like that, yeah. I think I did mention to you all, we will get speakers on. And what happened was the response was pretty good, was pretty amazing, I think. We've got a couple of people who agreed. What were your thoughts when I mentioned that to you all? What was going through your mind when I shared with you all, hey guys, I had this MET-Axe-Sharpening thing? Because, for our audience who are going to watch this, this special, over the chat, we only can say so much. But I think right now, going through this, reflecting back on our journey, I want to hear your side of things. What were you thinking when I shared, hey, I have this MET-Axe-Sharpening? And share your thoughts on the first week when we started doing giving and receiving feedback, like that topic. What was like your reaction? What was, before? So for example, when I mentioned the MET-Axe-Sharpening, I'm going to do this axe sharpening series with you guys. What was in your thoughts? And then after I ran the first session, what was it like for you guys? What do you think about it? Yeah.
For me, it was when you said you wanted to run giving and receiving feedback. To be honest, I didn't know what to expect. But when it was run, it gave me a lot of insights, because for me, in the office setting, especially in the office setting, to have a team where you need to constantly keep them engaged, but at the same time keep them in check. There is like a very thin line on how you balance between both being stern and also being on a friendlier terms with them, right? So that was when you came up with, I still remember so clearly, on the sandwich model that you came up about for the giving and receiving feedback. So that was when I had a lot of takeaways from each session, and believe it or not, it was like a very, very timely thing. For every message that you had, it was somehow very relevant back to a lot of other sermons that we normally watch. It correlates, and somehow it made it a lot easier for us to apply in our daily lives, whether be it at the office or at home or wherever. Because it was during that season, probably I was in a season where a lot of giving and receiving feedbacks were required. It was a tough time. COVID season is a tough time for a lot of people. So how do you keep people motivated, but you give them feedback and still receive feedback in a positive manner? But right after that whole session, right, suddenly I was like, I remember I told you, Jessie, that, hey Jessie, I think I want to, I share with my my staff. I share it with my team, you know. So that was what we did in my company. I just told my team, okay, let's change things up a bit. I believe it's like every day you come into office, it's a bit boring. You don't get to communicate much and all those kind of things. But let's just take like an hour a week to just, you know, de-stress and just chit-chat about anything. Just say whatever you want. And that was how I just tried and did, giving and receiving feedback with them spontaneously. And they were very, very receptive about it. And wow, they were very appreciative about it. And it actually continued on for a couple of weeks after that as well. And yeah, it also went up to my top management, and I reversed it towards the top management, and somehow it worked. Yeah, so that was my takeaway when you actually started with that. You said you wanted to do something different with the axe-sharpening. I'm like, I'm all for it. I had nothing to expect about it, but then I'm like, okay, whatever there is, okay, I'll just go and listen. You won't know what you will actually receive and understand from each session. It's very, very different for each session. Probably it's something you see every day, but you don't actually realize it until you actually hear people talking about it. Or maybe you feel like, maybe it's just me, but in fact, it's a lot of people might be feeling the same way as well. Yeah.
I think, you know, after that first session, I started thinking, okay, you know, somebody actually, you know, just asked me this earlier on, and I took down the notes, and somebody was asking me on what was your thought process when, especially somebody was asking what was your thought process during this time when you were running it, and then you halfway switch the program. You know, it's not easy for someone to just halfway run an alpha program and then come up with something quick. And then from Crazy Faith, it's quite funny how our journey began, right? It started from Crazy Faith, it led into alpha, and then it led into this MET-Axe-Sharpening session, which, funny, it really aligns because faith and grace, and this session is based on grace. And somebody did ask me, how did that filter my thoughts? How, you know, for some people it's quite challenging because, you know, you don't have that, how I'd say, the thoughts to think about it and quickly start up something and create something that would benefit others in such a short space of time. To answer that question, I guess it would be because I already had that, I was fortunate I had that slides all ready, prepared already at the site. And it was only when I started reflecting back, saying, hey, all those lessons that I've learned during my time when I was working at Alpha, it becomes useless if I don't pass it on to people and I'll just keep it to myself. And that was my approach to answer the question. Somebody was asking what was my thought process. To answer the question, that was basically my thoughts on how I approach this, you know, in between running the session with you guys and the rest of the group. It's not easy, of course, technically, because we started off of Crazy Faith and you wanted to build on faith. But then I also noticed that maybe Crazy Faith was not suitable for everyone in the time of season, but it was suitable for people who were running, you know, who were sort of, you know, in the dry season. And I just started to think then when I was started switching to alpha, which I thought would be more applicable to everyone. And then my thought process was, at that time, between those three, Crazy Faith, alpha, and this MET, my whole thought process was always expanding. How can I reach out to more people? It was about reaching out to people. And when you have that thought process of reaching out to people, that's where you start thinking of ways how to connect with people. So of course I started out with Crazy Faith, but Crazy Faith was only related to a certain part of audience. And when I started thinking about who my target audience was, why I was starting to do this, I started looking at, hey, maybe crazy faith is a good topic, it's really good topic, but it's only catered for a specific target audience. And so then what got me getting Alpha was because I did Alpha before. It's very open to people. But then again, it's not so, as I said, it's not applicable to everyone. There's a lot of things that may not be applicable to everyone, but surely, of course, Alpha has been applicable to most people. But then I just said, hey, I want to just involve everyone without talking a little bit with a subtle way of introducing, Jesus into the topic. And that's where I started thinking, hey, the axe sharpening is really, really good, because topics like giving and receiving feedback, it's in a subtle way we can point it back to Jesus. How did Jesus respond? How did Jesus give feedback and receive feedback from the people whom he was chastised? Jesus was criticized as well, if you look in the Bible and everything, yet he responded in love. And I said, in a subtle way, I could put this to reach out to my friends, but at the same time, I can reach out to more audience, as well, because this topic doesn't just apply to just, Christian context, but it applies to everyone. I was just with a friend earlier today, where we were discussing about things, how did this came out, when I just said, it's pretty fascinating how I came through the thought process, because it's really about when reaching out to people. And I just said, I shared with him, giving and receiving feedback. What do you think? And he said, it's really good topic to share, something that we all can learn. And I shared with him, it is a good topic to learn for everyone. And it's also, you can apply a little bit of context of, grace, and subtly for our Christian friends, we can apply a little bit of the Word of God, but it also can benefit people in a different way. And so that's where my thinking and thought process came up for this. And after that, what you mentioned, Wendy, was that it applied to you, and I think recently more so to Lee Jean. She messaged me about how it's impacted, and I think that's the similar impact I had when my leader did it in a physical setting. Unfortunately, we have not or can't do it on the physical setting yet, but I do have good news. So for those audience watching this, both of my team call members here, they do not know about it yet, so I'm just going to tell you all something really new today. So this afternoon, when I was with a friend, I said, at some point, of course, I want to run this in a physical context, as well as doing it not just online. And he did mention that they have a space that they rented for, they have a space that is available for them for about 2 years for free. And I was thinking of, in future, when we do our guest speaker and expansion, we will use that place to run our physical MET setting. So there we have it. Today there was the break news that I had a discussion with, and he shared the vision. And I have gotten him on board to be part of the team, because he's going to reach out to more people. We see more ideas coming in today, so some news. But after sharing with him on that, my friend just said, the thing that you're running is really, really good. I've watched the YouTube. I felt very encouraged, and that was something of a sign that I knew this was sort of going to work. But of course, deep down on my side, this was a big risk I was going to take, because I knew the probability, of course, I did have confidence, had 10% that it might not work. I had 90% that it will work for everyone, because it's so relatable for workplace, building a healthy culture. And 10%, of course, there was that 10% of doubt. But hey, just remember that doubt is not to say a bad thing, but doubt is also what gives faith, right? The only thing that blocks us from this, as what one of the sermon preachers says, Stephen Furtick, he says, it's fear, it's not doubt. So, but doubt gives you faith as well. So I did have doubt, but that triggered that faith that we've learned, the crazy faith. See how it applies into this context of crazy faith, and that spurred on the sessions further. So what happened after that was, we ran the session for about 5-6 weeks, I guess. 6 weeks before the new idea came in, and I started saying, let's bring in guest speakers. And the reason why, I think for some of you, I don't know whether I shared with you all why I brought guest speakers in. Do you know why I started bringing guest speakers in? Because throughout the whole session of my MET session, the Axe-Sharpening session, it was always conducted with my leader, right? The whole Axe-Sharpening session, when it was ran back at Alpha, when I was working with them, it was all ran by my leader. And the whole idea of the process was to pass down, his vision for the Axe-Sharpening was eventually after he runs the session, that everybody in the team will start coming up with topics that we all can learn. And that was when myself and my colleagues, we started typing in the topics that we wanted. I know that was something I wanted for this group at that time when I started this MET-Axe-Sharpening session. However, I understand because due to COVID-19, and that's what I shared with my other friend, that due to COVID-19, we all have been really busy sorting our lives out. And so I said, fortunately, I have all the stuff planned out. That was even before I had the guest speakers. And so my thought was like, oh no, COVID-19, I shouldn't get you guys to come up with topics during this time, because it's a time where you guys need to focus on sorting yourselves out first, and that's okay. But what I do have in mind was for 2021, when things settle down, I do eventually want our group to start taking charge, start coming up with topic, and you guys lead the session. You guys take charge of the topic that you all would lead, because and that's the whole reason, or the whole birth of the Axe-Sharpening session. At the end of the day, I would want this to be passed down to people who could then use these materials to reach out to other people. And that was the idea, the Axe-Sharpening plan, when my mentor led this. That was the whole idea. And so I did have this in mind for the Axe-Sharpening. I didn't share it with you guys what was the whole vision. I did ask y'all, I think I remember asked y'all, hey guys, why not you guys come up with your topic? But after that, I realized it was not sensible at the time. But I didn't tell you guys that it was not sensible. I just led the whole session, I guess. I led the whole session without asking y'all. I think 2 weeks ago, I started asking both of y'all, hey guys, y'all are supposed to lead a session, right? So but I subtly remembered that time without letting you guys know, was that it was during the pandemic. I realized it's pandemic. You had to sort certain things out, and so I decided to craft out all the topics for this year. And so that was when I started thinking, okay, I said to myself at that time, going through that thought process, I'm just saying, I'm not gonna check on them whether they've come up with a topic. I'm just gonna lead the sessions first, and then I'll just say I'll come up with idea. I know God will give me an idea, and I think that idea started off with me questioning, which was the topic we did on the golden circle, starting with your why. And so that was when I applied that why into why am I doing this? Why am I running this? And I did some reflection why I was running this Axe-Sharpening session, and I just realized it's to try and empower people. But my setting and my leader's setting at that time is very different. He had at that time there was no COVID. He was doing it in physical settings, whereas mine was on the online setting. So I was just thinking, how do we try to make things, or how can I do it better? Because each session, right, or at least as a leader, you would want either your colleagues, for some of you, or you want your friends who are picking this up from you, you want them to do better than what you're doing. And so that was my mindset. I started thinking, okay, how do I make it better? Because my leader came up with this already. He's given me the avenue, the platform, all the resources to run it. How do I make it better? of course, the activities that we did over the last 20 weeks had to be revamped into so that it would cater to online settings. And that was when I started thinking, how do we make our team grow? How do I impart growth to you guys while we are doing this in online setting? And that was when I started thinking, the best way for us to learn and grow is through other people, not just the same group of people. So I thought to myself, I can't be leading this all the time because we get into our comfort zone and we won't have and I always wanted for all of us to have an eye-opening experience. And so that was when I thought, hey, got a couple of people's stories who are revelational and who have touched myself, continue to open my eyes to growth, to see things differently. And so that was the birth of where I started approaching our guest speakers. Of course, it wasn't so easy. I only had 2 speakers at that time. It was only Dave Yang Hong, who was the TFM, Teach from Malaysia. By the way, Dave, on this New Year's Day, if you're watching this video, congratulations. You did tell me that you are now moving from a teacher's role to going into the Teach from Malaysia full-time in a capacity. So congrats, Steve. That's a really great testimony. That's a great story, and thanks for sharing with us. And then of course we did with Dr. Cairo Koo, right? That was the second session. So that was the only 2 speakers I had. Did I tell you all, were there more speakers to come, or was it those 2 speakers until I think later on, a few weeks later, that I said, hey, there's another speaker? Did I tell you guys that? Just recalling my steps back. You all remember? Any ideas?
You were mentioning about, let me recollect that. You were saying something about having more guest speakers after our first guest speaker, right?
I did mention, there'd be more guest speakers. I think I did. I actually can't remember, but I think I did.
Oh, you didn't actually tell everyone at the start. Probably you just mentioned that I've actually have a plan. You had the idea of maybe bringing in one of your friends from Teach from Malaysia. That time you just said Teach from Malaysia.
Yeah.
You just caught up with him. Then slowly, I think that idea grew also. So it was in between. We had gaps. We had guest speakers coming in once every few weeks, right? But I think after Teach from Malaysia, then you were mentioning, okay, I have another friend. You suddenly mentioned you came into contact, you caught up with another friend that you were connected with from your days when you went for volunteering and all those kind of things. So that was how all these ideas came about. Then you just say, oh, I have this idea, I have that idea, or maybe this person will be a good sharing platform, Then I was like, oh, okay, there's this kind of little things that we don't get to see in person. Maybe you've had the experience that you've gone there, they've had the experience that they've gone there, but we had not seen it in person. So that was when you started having ideas. So once it was confirmed, only you shared it with the group that, oh, I've got a friend that will be coming in. I'll have this guest speaker coming in to do some sharing of their journey for Teach for Malaysia and all that kind of things. So it was very impromptu. It was not definite that there will be a lot of guest speakers back to back, that kind of thing, but more of when it came, then you planned something. But somehow you started to had a lot of reconnections with your older friends. Then you planned out for a couple of months. You broke them up into schedules to fit to their schedules as well. So I guess, you shared part of it, but how you reconnected with them is, you didn't share with us how you reconnected with them, but you just shared, oh, I think there'll be a very good session, to share.
Great. How I recollected. So that's a good one. That's a good feedback and question from you to ask how did I reconnect with them. So how I reconnected with the speakers, interestingly, was through the thought of, I started thinking, so with Deep Yang Hong, I met him earlier back in January because I was, going to help out at Alpha as well. They needed some help in terms of, so it was my former workplace, and I said, I miss my colleagues, and I went there. And that was when I met Deep Yang Hong, because, I worked at Alpha for 2 years. And I met all my colleagues. I knew who were they. Of course, my siblings are in that church, so those people, the pastors and some of the people in the church, I knew them, and I started sitting down, and somebody said, "Hey, this is Deep Yang. He's now part of the music team." I was like, "Oh, so cool!" Wow, and started connecting, and it was there where he shared his story. I found out a little bit more about him, and I just thought, after that, I just said, hey, he was someone. I did a bit of background check. It's not stalking, but I did ask a couple of friends, never met Deep Yang Hong, because during my 2 years at Alpha, I pretty much see the church people who comes and go, because our office is just across the church building, so when they come in for kind of stuff. I haven't met him before, and so I said, it's very interesting to meet you, and what more, a person who is Chindian Deep Yang Hong, right, and has a Hong Deep Yang, so it's more interesting to meet people. So I'm like, hey, this is pretty cool dude to meet. He's pretty tall. He's tall he's really tall, like seriously pretty tall. At least I think at least half a head higher than me, taller than me. So yeah, tall lanky guy. Okay, let's go and meet this tall lanky guy. A little idea, I know he's such a nice guy, such a humble guy. I heard his story, and then when I came up, and then when I started planning out this guest speaker thing, I thought the first person to start off and what more during Merdeka Day is him, because he works at TFM, and then I found out that prior to telling you guys, he did his. I did tell you all he did his EP. That's when I found out, hey, he did his own extended play. He has this kopitiam stuff that he started, and that was something inspirational. A guy who is 29, a guy who is 1 year younger than me, has already done all this, and so that's a story that I found it very fascinating. And then I reconnected. Of course, that was when, when I told you guys about reaching out to people, and so I thought about reconnecting with people. This is a very important time to reconnect with people, especially during this pandemic, to keep in touch. And that's where I started reaching out to our next speaker, which was Eugene. And subsequently that got my mind broader on who should I get to come and talk about during this pandemic. And yeah, subsequently that's how I reconnected with people. The thought from that of reconnecting with people like whom I've never have not been in touch for a while. So that was how it all came about. So I'm gonna ask you all a few things. What do you think of the sessions? That was run. Because what were your thoughts on the sessions? So like the speakers. Because when I started doing that, I wasn't sure what you guys would do, what you guys were thinking. So tell us perhaps, after that first session with Deep Yang Hong, what you all felt, what do you all feel like? And then after that, subsequently, of course, was Dr. Koo. So maybe the first two experiences, what was your takeaways? What were you all feeling? Because I know the last one we had recently was, of course, with Nicholas Alfonso. That was a really eye-opener. I think you did mention that, but yeah, tell us really, what was your, when I first introduced the speakers session, what was your feeling like? What were you thinking like?
I think you had a very good first guest, like his story, or just the way he talks about his experience. I was very impressed by his humility. The way he talks about his experience, and that's something I want to learn, like in terms of how people communicate. So that caught my attention, and yeah, and it's good to, like you say, to learn from people outside of our usual circle, and that's where our minds are expanded also, and we get to see people in different fields. Or yeah, that's my takeaway, and I really learn a lot from each of those guests.
For me, it was when you introduced Divyang, he was like what Joyce was saying, because he showed off a lot of humility, but at the same time, over his whole session, his whole sharing about his work, about how he came up with Kopitiam talk, right? Is it Kopitiam talk?
Yeah, something like that. Is it Kopitiam poetry or something?
Kopitiam poetry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for that.
No worries.
That he empowered his students, he empowered young poets to express themselves, and it was a very good platform that for him to have had the idea to allow empowerment in young minds. Probably not many people might have that exposure or have that, what do you call that? Maybe they wouldn't have had the opportunity to have this kind of platform, but he created a platform for them. Maybe a lot of them didn't want to express, but he encourages them. He still gave them that thought. It's okay to express yourself. If you like poetry, there's nothing wrong with it. You just express yourself. And that was something like what Joyce says is very, very eye-opening, because to me, I probably wouldn't have ever thought that there are people that really like poetry, because I'm not one that really into poetry. I don't really understand it, but there's a lot of other people that does. But when you brought in Dr. Koo in, when you brought in Eugene in as part of for a talk on Cairo, it was a very sensible session. For me, it was very sensible, and I could relate a lot, and I could actually understand and try to relate to it, because at that point in time, for me, it was people were working from home a lot. They were not able to go out a lot, so their mobility was down the drain. Most of them would probably be down the drain, and for her to come in to just remind us on what it is like to have a proper bone structure, how do you sit proper, and all those kind of things. It's a sudden reminder that, oh, I need to sit properly. It's good for you to sit properly, although it's partially her journey, but it also reminds you on your health aspect, your physical aspect, and to listen through how she aspires from the beginning, through the struggle she had to go through when she was in Australia, coming back to Malaysia, and all those kind of things. It shows us not everybody has an easy start. They have to start somewhere small. They have to grow. They have to experience something before they can actually embark on a greater journey, right? So yeah, it was actually very, very inspiring to hear their journeys. They had so much enablement to start something, where in fact maybe for a lot of other people they would be, the word is fear of failure, so they don't dare to start something. With the fear of failure, you will be stuck at where you are, but they trusted that with one step ahead, just take one step, one small step at each time, you would move forward. And that was what they did. They just started small, and that was how they progressed, and through that it inspires people.
Okay, I'm now going to put you a little bit in the limelight. a little bit, I would say limelight. Okay, that's a bit exaggerating, going to limelight. So, this, for those audience, for those of you who are watching this, so this is something I probably never asked them before, and this is being real. So we've not prepared. I've not prepared anything for both my other members of this MET team who journeyed with me. I've not prompted them on what I was going to ask them. But this being real, I think this is how we connect with people, being real, and that's how I did for my session. So, for fun fact for all of you watching this episode, all the guests that I invite, I've only showed them the questions that I was going to ask them, but I've told them not to tell me the story, what they're going to share. Tell me on that day itself when you are leading, because that's where I want to experience the same authenticity, the realness of the story. Because I shared with for example, I told Vivian, don't share with me now, because if you do share with me now on the day itself, I'll be honest, I probably won't pay attention. You'll see my face muted and blacked out. But that's how it is, because you have to think creatively how to make people's attention span be, especially on Zoom, right, online, and you can get Zoom fatigue. It's real. And so I said, if I do listen to your story now, I won't be like, I'll be pretending, that's so good, Dave, but and that's fake. Like, you can hear my tone, that's like, so good, that's a fake kind of work. But when you are real, you are genuinely telling your real feelings, and that's what I did for all my speakers. I tell them, I shoot them the questions, I ask them the questions, I show them the questions I prepare for them, but I tell them, you just tell me what your outline is, but don't tell me your whole story, because it spoils the whole thing for me. I want to go through the journey together with the audience. And that's how I started thinking in that way. So now for me to ask you guys, so that's for the audience, to brief them up. Tell me, what were you thinking, when I think there's one time I did show you all the whole program list that I was going to do, right? I showed you a rough sketch of the outline of the whole plan, right? I think up to, I don't know when I did show you guys, but I roughly remembered telling you guys, I'm going to put you all into this calendar as well, so that when the time comes, you guys can put in your topic. But I remember I showed you all the topics that we were going to do. Tell me your thoughts when I introduced that topics to you guys. What were you thinking then? Was it like, oh my goodness, this Jesse, this Matt, this is a lot of stuff. How did he come up with this? Yeah, tell me the thought process. And by the way, for those tuning in, this is me asking them for the first time, because I've never asked them this before, because the only time I only asked them after the session was I asked all people who joined in on the WhatsApp chat. So we have a WhatsApp chat, and I asked them how was the session, and most of the time they would just say it's eye-opening. But I did not ask them, or I did not ask both of you guys on when I showed you the schedule, what was it like. So I think this is the first time I'm going to hear from you guys. Tell me, what were your thoughts when I introduced you all the whole set of things that we're going to do? Obviously now some of the things has changed, because along the way now when I run the program, things changes as well. So while I give you some time to think on that, so obviously there were some changes along the way during this time, where the topics that I showed them, which was I think 2 months ago, two and a half months ago, it was that. But if you look at the schedule now, it's all switched up, because this month it's all filled up with guests. Like, it started with 2, it's now multiplied. I guess now I would have 14 speakers. Yeah, just to break it to you, I probably have 14 speakers that I've already approached. So it's quite a gap. Yeah, so this is the first time you're hearing I've approached nearly 14 people to come and share. Some are still, getting back to me, but yeah, I have 14. So this is pretty amazing how it all started from a conversation of Crazy Faith to now we're expanding. Now, notwithstanding, while Joyce and Wendy think about what they think of what you guys think of my scheduling of that when I first showed to you, what happened next was after the guest, that's where it spurred on my idea of going on Facebook Live. The whole idea, because I wanted to share, if I wanted to reach out to other people, the only way we can think is maybe I'll go on Facebook Live. And so that's how that little small steps, I said, okay, let's go on Facebook Live. And after Facebook Live, I was saying, why not upload the sessions on YouTube? And so that started coming in 2 weeks after. And then, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, I start saying, if people can't watch on YouTube, they can't watch on Facebook Live, how about put it up on podcast? And that was where Wendy had initially said, she said, why not do a podcast? It didn't hit me until, I started having guest speakers. And that was when the purpose, when Wendy started saying, I started seeing Wendy's idea of podcast. She mentioned, with speakers and their stories being real and shared, and it's really important, and they're sharing a story. I said, got to put it up on podcasts. And so that's where Spotify and Apple Podcasts came up, and all within the space of 2 months, this whole 3 ideas just spurned up, and that was how it went. And just last month kind of launched our first merchandise, so there's sort of another step forward. And then the next announcements would be launching an app for the MET session. So I think you guys would hear the launch of the MET application during our talk on the 21st of December. So back to you guys. I hope you guys had some thoughts. What do you guys think when I first, showed to you guys that whole list of sessions that I had planned in store for you guys? What were you thinking at that time?
Yep. I had no special feeling, but I find it very good to have that schedule, because at least it gives me something to look forward to, and I know that something is in place. You already have the things planned out, even though I don't know how you do that, so many topics, but so it engages me as a participant on the group, because I know that every week we will meet and we will discuss a topic, and it really, I think it keeps me engaged. And I also want to say, wow, just now what you mentioned, from inviting guest speakers, is I really can see, I'm really amazed by your I don't know, your creative idea or your initiative, or even just why. I want to know why I want to know your why, and just now you briefly talked about your why for this group, but I just want to say, wow, you're doing this for other people, for the benefit of all of us, and wanting to reach out to even more, or helping more people. So that's really something that I think that's something that keeps me want to continue to be in this group and support this. And so my turn to throw you the question, you're really living it out, that kind of wanting to help others.
Okay, right. So before I go that, Wendy, anything?
I think when you actually showed the list, right, I was surprised. Initially, when you told us that you'll be putting up on a schedule, and you actually shared the schedule with us. initially it was just a few topics. So I'm like, oh, okay, there's something that might be for us to look forward to, like what Joy said. Then every week, before the session, you would tell us briefly about what that topic would be, so we have a heads up of what to look forward to. So time comes to Monday, you know, oh, tonight I need to tune in. I want to know more about what he's going to elaborate on it, and what the takeaways would be. But then suddenly one day you just texted me and said, oh, I have the whole schedule all scheduled up till 2021. I'm like, how? I really didn't know how. You said, oh, I'm just going to split it up. There'll be a few gaps for a few of you. Like earlier on, you were saying you wanted people to have the ownership to share their points of view. Then you left gaps in between. Then I'm like, how did you? The thought process was, how do you even have so many ideas to fill up a schedule for 2021? I mean, it's amazing. And when you suddenly say you have everything lined up, I just had no words to say lah, because it's like, for me, I wouldn't have had so many ideas on what to share. But what I could really see is you really wanted this podcast to grow. You really wanted to reach out to people. You really wanted to target the audience, a wider audience, to connect with people, to relate to people. Something that could reach out and relate to them, and they could see it as something relatable to their daily lives. An easy way into connecting with people. Although not face to face, but yeah, they might just find it. Most of the time for me personally, when I hear 2 sessions is I'm not alone. It's the feeling of I'm not alone is very, very, very different compared to it feels I am facing this alone. You don't know what's going to happen. How am I going to overcome it? But when you openly talk about it and you have those schedules up and people share about it, you know you're not alone. Everybody has certain challenges. But like what Joy said, I really want to know, how did you even have so many ideas, and what spurred all those ideas to come about? You know, it's something we didn't actually get to hear much from you on how those ideas came about.
Great question. And there was something, earlier this, I shared with someone when I met earlier today, and why, that's the reason why we all start with our why, and we did that session on feeling on the golden circle, and it got me reflecting, and especially how I got all these speakers. Now that I mentioned I've got another 14 speakers to you guys, I started asking myself every day, asking why, and of course then I started saying, if I want to reach out to others during this very unprecedented year, everybody is going through a very tough time, and that only stirred my purpose up in trying to help people out, because I know for some of them, their voice are unheard. Some people are going through depressions, they're going things alone, and I think for both of you, there are some people within our group. We're not going to name names here, but we know there are some people whom we know that they are going through a loneship, and that's why I do invite them into these sessions, so that they don't go into that path. But why, the whole why, it all started with me thinking of, I want to empower people, and that's the number one thing. You want to empower people. My why, and that was my why. I want to empower people to leave something behind for them, a tool for them to use to be empowered by, and so that when they get this empowerment from other people, they will have that courage to go up and take that step outside the comfort zone. In fact, let me tell you a story. Organizing all of this for the audience, especially who's watching this, this is something I'm not very comfortable doing. Sharing this, going online, being called a Connect group leader. Those are stuff that it's outside my comfort zone. And if I was able to do that, I wanted to do something for other people so that they would take that lead to step out of their comfort zone. And the only way I remembered about this was back 2 years ago. I remember I made a commitment with my leader. And so Abel, if you're watching this, I really want to thank you for that commitment you made to me. Between you, me, and God, I did mention to him, saying that, he asked me, what would you like to grow? And I said, the thing that I want to grow the most is I'm afraid of presentation, going up in front. Right? And so that was what the commitment I said to myself. If I want to grow, I need to do something that's beyond my comfort zone. And in order for other people to grow, you need to step out of that comfort zone. And I said, okay, this will be something I've not done. And that's where the podcast, everything all came about. Doing this, going on Facebook Live especially, because that's where your majority of your audience would watch you and everything, and that's even more pressure, right? I'm not as good, frankly, like how my dad, he can go out and speak to 1,000 people. I'm not that kind of person who is naturally gifted to go out and talk like that. But I just said to myself, if I'm going to try and reach out to people with what I want to achieve, which is I want to reach out to more people, then I have to take that step to reach out to people. I have to take that step to step out of that comfort zone. And so that was the reason why I started, what I did. How did I get all the ideas was through, hearing other people's stories. When you hear other people's stories, you watch their situation. That was where I said, I started thinking, how can I make our session better to reach out to a further audience? How can I be more understanding to other people whose voice who are not heard, right? But when coming up with these topics, the 20 topics, it got me thinking this would help us to be better people, to go out and reach out to other people. And so that was when I thought through the whole schedule, which I'm going to show to you guys right now, at least for those audience. I'll brief you all roughly. So for both Wendy and Joyce, they have not roughly seen my 2021 schedule yet. I'm going to show it to you guys. Since this is a New Year's Day, I'm giving you guys, those who are watching, a head start to what topics you can look ahead. So this is the 2021 program, and it's been planned up to sort of middle of first week of March. Of course, that being said, I have not included the 14 speakers that I still have in mind, which I do have 2 who are confirmed, which will occupy the whole of March. So technically March will be filled up as well. But yeah, going through this, and let's reflect back. It all started from the 2020 program. As you can see, of course, the idea was to throw it to you guys to lead the session. But as I just shared with you all earlier on, I just realized, it's the pandemic year. So I said, okay, I have all the topics, and these are the topics that we can grow. Every one of us can grow. And that was, basically this is the whole thing, the whole schedule for 2020. And if you're watching this on New Year's Day, on the 4th, we have a special speaker again to kickstart things off. And for the month of January and February, it will be a month on mental illness. I'll talk about mental illness and psychology. So just to give our audience a rough taste for this New Year's Day, when this goes up on New Year's Day, or if you're watching it on the 4th, it's someone who is going to share a powerful testimony about mental illness that she went through. And it was recommended by another of our my audience who tuned in. She said, this is a good story. I said, I'm going to chuck you in, slot you in first thing first, kick off 2021. And then of course I have not, these are, as you can see here, the schedule is not, really confirmed because the topics can swap in and out. So for example, engaging the generation, I may swap that around because I have another guest speaker who will be coming on to talk about who is a child psychologist, but he's going to be talking on psychology in today's pandemic. So that will occupy the whole of January, February. So yeah, back to what you all were saying. I think I'll just stop share. That's the whole month of the schedule so far for 2021. Hopefully you guys will be excited with the topics that we're going to do. But back to y'all, how did this, again, back to the creative idea. I honestly, I can't find a word to tell you how I did, but I know is when I put my heart for it. When you put your heart to do certain things, you just find this creative idea. And one thing I just want you all to know is it's about having faith. Putting that faith that you will have ideas to come, not to worry, and don't think too much. And that was my whole thought when I came out with this schedule, especially now that whole list for 2021, it was switched. It's not a confirmed date. So maybe today I showed you guys who's watching is that next moment it'll be filled up the whole year. I don't know. It could be filled up for the whole year as well. You never know. But yeah, I hope that really answers your question how I got that. But if you really want to know, I think the desire, the passion for me to try and reach out to people during these tough times and hearing stories was what got me thinking, how can I reach out to more people? So yeah, that's how, and that was my why and how I started. And look where we are today. As I said, I think we've come quite a long way. What was your, I think now I'm gonna just ask before we wrap up, hopefully this wrap up, in a short while. Tell us your whole journey, or you too, your whole journey from the start to where we are now. Do you have any thoughts of your whole journey? Like, what's your journey been? How's your feel like? To me, if I do share with you guys, I'm, as much as you guys are learning, as I share, I'm also learning along the way. Even though you all saw, like, you plan it out. Most people say, hey, you plan it out, you should know what you experience. But honestly, I'm also learning as you guys, because the learning never stops, as I say. But you see, the speakers, as I mentioned, each speakers I get in to come and talk, and I share them the vision of this, pause, reflect, and carry on. They felt really like moved. And then secondly, I always emphasize to them, I'll share with you the questions, but don't share me what you're going to share, because it's false, the whole thing for me, and the authenticity is lost. So I said, share it during that time. Don't tell me you planned it out. I want to be part of the audience. And it's about teamwork, right? Being together. When we are together, we learn so much. And so that's my whole journey so far, even to today. Hearing from you guys what you're saying is something I've never seen on our WhatsApp chat, And so that's why I wanted to do this special New Year's Day, because I wanted to hear from you guys, also to share your thoughts on this journey that we ventured. And just to sum up, it all started from a sermon called Crazy Faith, birthed from there, and then it started from a car thing with Tommy and Bao, showed them that thing, and then it came through a texted you guys, and then we sat down in somewhere, we discussed about it, and then after that we went into cafe, started doing it in Jar Cafe. Roy and Abel, thank you for lending us that space for that time. We started that out, but then COVID struck, and it really had some plans all flipped upside down. But God was really good. I continued to persevere. We started doing it on Zoom. Fast forward later, in July came out the MET MET-Axe-Sharpening, and then it all took off from there. Speakers come in, we launched our first FB live session with the speakers, and then it went on YouTube. Our sessions then went on to Spotify after a couple of weeks. It all happened within the space of 2 months, this kind of stuff. And then in November, we did launch a bit of a merchandise, and now today in the process of thinking of launching an app for people to access the whole resource. So that's the whole journey so far. I think it's been what a ride for us. It's a lot of reflection for me. So yeah, wonder what your takes, before we just wrap this tonight. It's a really good thought to hear from you guys on this, what are your top takeaways, during this journey? Something you would like to share.
I really have to thank this group for my journey this year. I mean, it's really a personal growth year for me, and this group really helped in a lot of ways. And as I'm reflecting, I think one of the areas that I grew is my capacity to share, because not to say just financially or things like that, but even sharing your experience, my experience. I used to have that feeling that after I share, it will not. The more I talk about it, the less special it will be for me, for myself. So somehow I felt that. But this year, I think what God has shown me is that the more I share, the more I receive. So it's really that part where we say the more we give, the more we receive. And I come to learn that actually everything that we have, whether it's your time, your gifts, your experiences, your learnings, is meant to be shared. Like what your why is, it's meant to be passed on to other people so that it impacts their lives. And I cannot imagine can you imagine if you did not share what you learned from Crazy Faith, if you did not tell us about it, I cannot imagine where I would be, or so it's really that impact that passes on to people, and it could really change people's lives. And and one of the things that I come to realize just this month is about being generationally focused. So it's like, it's along what I said just now. Like sometimes we pray for something, we want something to happen in our lives, but when we don't see it yet, what if it's for a bigger purpose? Like it's not just limited to my own life, God's purpose is always bigger than just me, so I think this is something that I am moving towards. So if I reflect, like from having a very small capacity to share to having a heart to want to share, because I want my friends to know, or I want to empower them, like you say, to step out of their fears or their comfort zone. And so I think it's a really good change for me to move from that I want to keep the good things to myself, to moving to I want others to experience the goodness for themselves, to like, wow, it's really how can we impact even the next generation, so this is something that I can that is now my journey where I'm at. And I really like the logo, the tagline of the MET, which is pause, reflect, and carry on. So for pause, I think 2020 was a year of pause for everyone, because we no longer have all the busy schedules, activities, and a lot of times, why do we even do all these busy things? Like, we lost our why. We did not have the time to reflect. So that's a good pause, and even the earth paused and healed in so many ways, and I guess some of us also healed, so that's why actually 2020, I would say, is a blessing in disguise, because there are so many good things that came out of it in terms of our thoughts or our healing. And to reflect is something that I already naturally love to do. Like, I love to reflect on myself. So and carry on is interesting, because a lot of times I just stuck at the reflect and I don't know how to move forward to carry on. So yeah, that's how I relate to this MET. Yeah, thank you.
Well, let's just say it's been a very, very long year. It's been over a year since we just started this journey. Since October last year, actually, until now. And let's just say it's a very, very interesting journey to have shared with a group of friends, that we embarked on a journey. We grew in faith together. We keep each other in check. We remind each other that despite whatever challenges you are, there are always people to be with you. You're never alone. We sometimes, when we focus on God and everything, we sometimes tend to forget we can't see Him. So that's where God normally places people around you to show His care for you through people. And yeah, it has been a very, very interesting journey. I mean, for every single session that you have, right, it gives you new insights. Because like what you say, every day is a learning day. You learn something every day. Even if you do the littlest thing, the most mundane thing, somehow you will learn something out of it. We may complain, we may grumble, we may have had a bad day, but somehow, if we learn to flip the switch, what do you actually learn out of it? It teaches you to see things in a different perspective. We always think of the question, what if? And what if is sometimes seen as a killer to a lot of dreams, a lot of ideas. What if this doesn't work? What if that doesn't work? But we keep forgetting of, what if this situation is now bad? What if it actually works? It could go both ways, right? So for me, this whole journey I think it was a very eye-opening session. A very, very eye-opening journey. Each session keeps you hyped up for the coming week. Like how the whole idea started with Jessie saying, I'm going to put it on Mondays. Initially, it was either Monday, Wednesday, or other days, right? But then we said, you were telling us, you know what? A lot of people keeps on telling us they have Monday blues, and normally people dread going to work on Mondays. So what if we came up with keeping people in high spirits to look forward to something at the end of Monday, that no matter what happens on Monday, there will be something to look forward to on Monday evenings. So it gives us something to look forward to. It was a very good idea, because now every Monday is, it's Monday tonight, I have a session. I get to hear what people talked about and hear what their sharing is about. And when you started introducing a lot of speakers, I think it was a very timely move. To be very honest, I think it was a very timely move because that was when we get to see out of our circle of friends. Probably when you've known your circle of friends for some time, the journey you've shared with them for a few months, it might now revolve within the same things. It would have probably revolved around the same stories. And then now when you introduce guest speakers and all that, you get an insight into the outer circle, what their journey was like, and how it's a very refreshing touch to it. Every session with the guest speaker is a refreshing touch, and it refreshes the whole journey again. It gives you new insights again. No matter whether it has been related before, it somehow feels different because now you're hearing it from someone else. It's not someone that you already know, but someone else you might not know. So for me, it was a journey where I learned a lot. I learned and tried how to apply the sessions most of the time because I work most of the time. So I tried to relate to it and apply it at the office. And I saw changes. I saw how people react differently to changes. And when I shared with them on all these sharings that you shared with us, I saw changes in them as well. And I saw how they reacted differently to other people as well. So it's a chain reaction. So like what you were saying, it's good things are meant to be shared. If you only keep it within yourself, now if for example you're an empty vessel, you get everything all in, you fill yourself up to the brim, right? But you never pour it out. What could you bring in more? You don't have the capacity to bring in more. So that's when you start sharing with people. You let people continue on the goodness of each session, whether directly or indirectly. And from there, you get to bring in more insights. We learn both ways, So it's where I see how the session relates, parts and parcel of life, day to day, week by week. And yeah, that was it for me lah. It was interesting to be part of the journey itself. For you to actually approach us in the beginning was already a tiny thing. I would like to think of it as God somehow chose you to approach us at a specific time that we were both facing with different situations. So that was my take on the whole journey. It's very interesting, and there are more things to look forward to lah.
Oh yeah. Wow. That's something new for me to hear from you guys today, and for those watching this today, this something really new. I didn't ask them this until I shared with. I started asking them a while ago, and yes, Wendy had explained about why the whole purpose is called the MET, and in a sense, there is a purpose also behind why is it called the MET, and that's why it's called Monday Evening Talks, because it's all about perspective. Even today, I will just show you guys. Every day, I will just put this as my wallpaper on my phone, and it says, I don't know, so it says something like, you see, it's all about perspective, right? If you can't see it, I'm just going to just show it here for those people, but if not, I'm just going to read out. Sometimes the problem is just your perspective, and that was what drove me in wrapping up. Perspective is so important in how we run things, and what drove me to creativity was each challenge I was facing. I always just thought I just need to change my perspective. And when you change your perspective, you start seeing things very differently, and your creative ideas come into play. And I think one of them just mentioned before tonight's our session was, just do it. And that's what I want to encourage people. Yeah, the Nike tagline says just do it, right? And so sometimes when you try and do something creative, there's always risk. There's always risk. And if we don't take risk, we won't be able to, be where if I didn't take risks, I wouldn't be where I am today, where I'm doing all this, taking risks. It all starts from taking risks. And I think we also talk about failing forward. If for those audience watching this tonight, go and check out the failing forward video that I posted the review on YouTube, because that was also part of my journey in creating this MET session. Because if you know how to fail forward, I mentioned to give you a bit of insight, I mentioned to a friend of mine that if we continue to experience success all the time, and then when you experience that one failure in your journey, that's the end. Some people even commit suicide just because they experienced one failure. They were experiencing such a great success, and when they stumbled one failure, they think that's the end of the world. I encountered a lot of failure. I would say, I won't call it failure. It's almost like failure, but it's disappointment, I'll say. As Wendy mentioned earlier, I encountered disappointments when people didn't turn up, but that was okay. I continued pushing on. It's okay if one idea didn't work. Try another idea. And if Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times, is it 10,000 times? Yeah, trying to do. He just said it's not. He failed 10,000 times. He said it's not a failure. What he did mention was he just found 10,000 ways that didn't work, and that's it. That's all about perspective. And so that was what drove me into this. And if you ask me now, what both of them have just mentioned, like they're looking forward to the next few months. I don't know what's in store. I'm still working on it, but this idea, the sole purpose of all this MET session or MET-Axe-Sharpening is to empower other people, and more so during this time when everybody is stuck at home, they think that they can't learn anything else. This is where I want to bring in the MET session, and that's why I brought this all out. Because during the pandemic, a lot of us are stuck at home, and so that's the whole reason I brought this out, so that people can be involved. They will learn something new every day. It's not that you're stuck at home. There's always ways to learn something new. And I don't know what's in store for the next few months, years ahead to come. But certainly what I've just showed you, that is on the screen earlier a while. So just going to show screen again. So as I showed you guys here, it all started by just writing it down first. I remember Joy saying her story, saying that she wrote things down, and that was how I did it. I'll just write everything down. Your story as well. It reminded me something, Joyce, and that's how I pushed on for 2021. That when he said, "How did I wrote 2021?" I just wrote it down. I just said, So taking that step of faith to write things down, you can always change it later. So write the things down. All these are like stuff in. I have a couple of topics, like, see, it's still here. I don't know. Essential worship, it's still to be confirmed. Developing youth today in Christian community. Well, Aaron and Abel, now that you're seeing, these are my thoughts of trying to get both of you on board. Hopefully you say yes after watching this video, but those are my thoughts. You are my thoughts. But and Wendy as well, Wendy Liu, if you're watching this, those are giveaway already to you guys of my next 3 speakers. But that's that's the whole idea so far. I've got right after this video, I have to work on this. So you guys, hopefully when you watch this, I still have to work on this. And you must be wondering, how do you have so many times? The other question I guess you guys will be asking, and I think I know what both you, Joyce, Wendy, and the audience will be asking. How do you find time to do all this? how. And honestly, I just, I did schedule this out. I'll just find, when I have the time, I'll just make time. I don't know how, but somehow make the time to do it and get it out. So it's up to your purpose. If you guys are asking how do I have time to do this, make the videos, do the posters, I think if you have purpose, you have passion to do it, to reach out, you will find time to make it and to do it. So that's how I do it. And for those, hopefully this answers your question about how I do it, about making time and having the passion to do it, and you will do it. And 3 quotes, just do it. So yeah, that's about it. So yeah, that's about it. Our whole journey from, well, what started in 2019. I didn't even expect to launch this. Didn't even expect to do this, honestly, frankly. But I believe that crazy faith, as I mentioned to you guys, there was a reason why that sermon came out. The reason why, and that's why a lot of people were asking, Jesse, how are you so upbeat for the rest of the year, even though COVID struck? Well, I'll just say, it's through faith. And it was through that, holding on to faith, that came up ideas, creativity, that during the bad times, as Joyce mentioned, all these are a blessing in disguise. With that, I'm just gonna say, all the best to all of you in 2021. And here's something I will tell you guys: always believe for greater things to come. Have that faith that greater things is to come, and when you believe that, you will work towards it. You will mood and your passion will go along together with it. And that's how I work things out this year. Why my faith has worked, because I believe there's always greater things to come, and I hope the same for you guys. So yeah, hopefully this message will be a blessing to you guys and everyone is watching this.